Yeah.
anxious and miserable. And they would throw a grenade at the way things are in the form of Donald Trump and continue living the way they've been living. And the reason it's important to think about that now is that it's still the same sort of thing where Trump is taking a sledgehammer to the world as we've known it, and the Democrats are saying, well, you can't do that. That's not how the rules are written. American staff said that the way that the rules are written, the way that the system
Yeah, man.
doesn't work for them. So there has to be a bigger idea.
Might as well chicken it up that time you made it that one time that time.
To perform certain functions. They were
so
there
good.
to make sure that our obligations to one another are
so good.
And they haven't been.
I think a theme across all of the close analysis of what has happened to countries that have slid into authoritarianism in the past is that
I said, baby, what you want to do to drive me so crazy?
Large corporate or big corporations suddenly changing their policies and their political actions, or nonprofits stripping words from their websites right now. What do you think is so different from the first time Trump was in office to right now?
You cook two at once, you know.
Statements he made the first time around kind of went in and out of a lot of these actors' ears. And this
time, here, yeah, just throw it on there.
What they are doing, they are recalculating, they are making changes to be on
and then whenever you're ready, throw it on when you're ready.
Trump policies.
Yeah, I think that these decisions are rational, each one of them taken separately.
Spiral jetty.
And they are rational even if you contrast them to Trump's first term.
I said, baby.
That whoever makes these decisions at businesses or nonprofits,
you make me feel so damn crazy.
That Trump was an anomalous political
event
in this country's history. With Trump's second election,
use all that goddamn cheese. It's gotta go.
This is what this country is.
Fuck that.
And I think that rationally, people are settling
use all
for
that
the long haul
goddamn
and making decisions about their organizations.
Be afraid
that will benefit them, or at least keep them
winter
safer in the short term. And that's really the problem with this kind of bans, is that it is reasonable, it is well thought through, and it is sometimes even values-based. People are thinking, I'm protecting my
totally.
I'm protecting my organization. The problem is that when everyone does that, that is exactly how autocracy is built.
I said, baby.
M. Gesson is an opinion columnist at the New York Times and the author of The Future is History, How Totalitarianism Reclaimed Russia. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for having me.
The Trump administration's freeze of U.S. foreign aid.
I need a hit of whiskey.
East, the U.S. agency
because I feel it up inside.
Had been one of the biggest funders of aid projects for Palestinians to encourage stability, to encourage peace. Now, projects in the Middle East are under a stop work order and face an uncertain
come on
future.
over.
NPR's Daniel Estrin explains what this looks like
Come on
in
over,
the Israeli
cutie pie.
West Bank.
We walk down a wet and muddy road in the Palestinian city of Halhul. It's a mountain town in the West Bank's southern area. The road is dug up.
Why, hello there.
Underneath we
Hey,
see
what's up, cutie pie?
What are you guys doing here? The town's water maintenance man, Sam Abu Nishan, says they're fixing a burst water pipe. It happens every couple of days. USAID had been trying to fix that. Now, the world's biggest humanitarian aid organization is effectively shut down. The Trump administration says aid is not aligned with interests, and it's reevaluating aid worldwide. Palestinian engineer Mohammed Spitan says he's working with USAID on a $46 million project, a smart technology to find leaks and fix the water system. It's a parched area. The old pipes struggle to deliver water high up in the hills. Sometimes residents go months without running water. He says USAID wasn't just paying to fix it. He says USAID provided American contractors with top expertise in infrastructure construction.
Well, maybe not.
Now what do you want to do?
Wherever you drive in
Roll one
Palestinian cities, you see billboards marking USAID road and water projects from over the years. It's been a decades-long U.S. mission to build the capacity for the Palestinians to have their own independent state. So here's a sign. It's written on marble. USAID, installation of water pipes, funded by the American people.
2012. أنا اسمي جاد أبو عصبة رئيس بلدية حلحول.
Baked.
We met the mayor of the town, Jihad
Me
Abu
too.
Asabeh. He says these USAID projects
I wonder how many
employ a
times they
lot of
buttered those
Palestinians.
breads.
Cutting funding will mean jobs lost in an economy that has suffered since the deadly
Looks like you
Hamas
got 'em pretty
attack on
good.
Israel in 2023 led to restrictions on Palestinians in the West Bank.
إنه يرفع من
The
مستوى
mayor says this will drive instability and worsen the already dire economic situation that the Palestinian people have been facing since October 7th, 2023. A Palestinian official who requested anonymity because they're not authorized to speak publicly tells NPR the U.S. has also frozen aid to the Palestinian security forces, which have worked with Israel to patrol the West Bank. USAID has also helped fund humanitarian aid in Gaza amid war. The State Department says it will continue life-saving aid for Gaza. In President Trump's first term, Congress passed a law
In
allocating
Gaza?
$250 million over 5
Lady
years
Gaza.
for projects bringing Palestinians and Israelis together. Those funds are also frozen now for projects like the Jerusalem Youth Chorus for Palestinians and Israelis.
Just like
Project Rosanna brought Palestinian nurses to Israeli hospitals to learn new skills. Ken Bob from Project Rosanna says that's on hold now.
We were
Is
just
that what we
about
were using
to
for this?
launch a training program in February for representatives from
Can I check 'em?
all the Palestinian hospitals to deal with diabetes. And everyone was very excited about coming and really training in Israel for a couple of days. And of course, we had to cancel it.
He says it comes at the worst time, after a devastating war, when trust between Israelis and Palestinians is at rock bottom.
People in the healthcare profession are traditionally very well respected in their communities, and so have them be voices of common sense and understanding really can help build this sense of trust between Israelis and Palestinians that is so deficient right now.
Driving around the West Bank, Palestinian water engineer Mohammed Spitan took us up steep hills to see the water infrastructure the U.S. has helped build over the years. But he keeps making quick U-turns.
Right.
Producer
Where's
Nuha
his-
Musleh asks,
Should you
is
get back
the
here?
Israeli military here?
Ah.
Why are you laughing?
He didn't
Why?
want to risk driving too close to Israeli settlements and military outposts.
That's pretty funny.
A reminder of one of the only exceptions to the
Why do
Trump
you say
administration's foreign aid freeze
I knew
around
she was
the
gonna do
world.
that.
The State Department says U.S.
I could've told
military financing for Israel continues. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Halahul in the West Bank.
You're listening to All Things Considered from
Yeah.
NPR News. And this is Wisconsin Public Radio. It's 5:18. I'm Brady Carlson. Thanks for being with us today. We have much more still ahead in this hour
These
of
are probably
All
done.
Things Considered. The Trump administration says it's sending
Yeah.
only the worst criminal immigrants and gang members
Oh, yeah.
to Guantanamo Bay. Critics worry about how the administration is making those judgments, and there are claims that tattoos are even influencing those decisions. NPR's Adrian Florido takes a closer look in about 15 minutes.
Wisconsin Public Radio is a service of the Wisconsin Educational Communications Board and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, with additional financial support from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and from listeners through the Wisconsin Public Radio Association.
Join us March 14th to play WPR Music Bingo at Vintage Italian Pizza in Superior. Test your music trivia knowledge and win some WPR swag. You can reserve your bingo card at wpr.org/presents. This is Wisconsin Today. I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
And I'm Rob Sherman.
What people see is the prices they're paying, right? Or the level of credit card debt they have. And so
But there's also a practical need to move toward a carbon neutrality, especially in the lakes
Oh, yeah.
country.
And if you come together and deal with the issues, you have a greater amount of collective strength.
Wisconsin Today, weekday mornings at 9 on WPR
Thanks.
News.
Thank you.
Some clouds
Look at
continue to move through the state as the day starts to wrap up. Overnight, northern Wisconsin could see a few flurries.
Lows just below or
Yeah.
just above zero across the state. Tomorrow, partly cloudy and not quite as cold as today. We'll see highs for Thursday around 20 degrees statewide. On Friday, partly sunny and quiet weather. Highs reach the low 20s for the end of the week. This is WPR.
Support for NPR comes from this station.
Oh man, that's
and
all I
from
want to do
Your
is
Part-Time
eat.
Controller, a nonprofit accounting specialists, providing financial management services to support stronger nonprofits who make the world a better place. Learn more at yptc.com/NPR. From Procter & Gamble, maker of ZzzQuil, with a range of products designed to relieve occasional sleeplessness to help people fall asleep. Learn more at zzquill.com. And from ECMC Foundation at ecmcfoundation.org.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Scott Pitt. By now, you have probably heard about the Trump administration's efforts to dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The Consumer Watchdog was established in 2011 in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. The initial goal was to better regulate banks and other institutions that provide financial services. But in recent weeks, as President Trump has taken charge, about 150 employees have been fired, and the rest have been told to stop working. Susan Tompor is a personal finance columnist for the Detroit Free Press. She has spent years writing about the CFPB and the role it plays in helping consumers, and joins me now. Welcome.
Thank you, Scott.
What was your first response to these moves, the firings and then the stop work order?
Well, I think the first concern is, of course, President Trump had a first administration, and the CFPB was a much diluted organization or agency. Wasn't as active, but it still existed. So it was a little disturbing, I think, to think that you turn on the consumerfinance.gov and see a 404 error sign. It's a little bit disturbing. I did since find out, though, you can still file complaints if you go through some of those pages. And today, just to test it out, I actually called their hotline, and a person did answer. So I don't, I don't know if how that is, but what she told me was that she could still take complaints, but they have stopped action.
And you framed in writing, you've called the CFPB at times a consumer cop on the beat, right? This is an organization that could address violations, shoddy practices, fraud, hidden fees. That's how you wrote about it. Yeah, there has been constant criticism. A lot of Republicans in Congress, a lot of business groups have had a big problem with the CFPB. What's the best way to frame the objections that have come in over the years?
Well, they didn't want it to start with. They said the Republicans and the bankers said we didn't need this to start. So go back, 15 years. They did not want this agency. They said other agencies could handle these things. So nothing's changed since then. But the CFPB has expanded its reach. Bankers are saying they're involved in overreach or overextension of their powers. And I think that's the argument right now. A big case that the CFPB was involved with was trying to get lower fees on credit cards and checking accounts, overdrafts, late fees. They were trying to lower the fees on these late fees for credit cards and checking accounts. You can imagine the banks don't want to do that. No business wants to have government come in and tell them what their fees should be. But consumers, on the other hand, if you don't have this agency, you're stuck going to all sorts of different agencies. You might go to the Attorney General's office in your state. You might go to the Better Business Bureau. You might go to the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. This is kind of a one-stop shop. And what's good about a one-stop shop is they can spot trends. They can spot when they're seeing a lot of reports from against one company doing XYZ. And if they're going against the law, I think it could be easier to find and to bring action against that company. That would be my argument. That would be why I think this does have value.
Look, a lot of people will come across the CFPB, or in the past at least, during important life purchases or moments where they feel like they're really in a rut, buying a house, buying a car, suddenly being owed a lot of money. You've been writing about these topics for a long time. What advice would you give to Americans kind of navigating these tricky purchases if they can no longer turn to a place like the CFPB?
Well, I think it's going to become increasingly important to do more research, talk to people who have success with certain companies, don't deal with companies that are not responding to their consumers. That's kind of hard to do, but it is going to be on the consumer to do even more research. You don't want to be in a situation where you didn't read the fine print. You might want to have somebody else read your fine print on some of these cases. Too often, we trust people, unfortunately, and sometimes that trust isn't well placed. And in a case like this, nobody's going to be watching. There's maybe someone will watch. I don't know who might watch, but you're not going to have this big agency watching any longer if this change continues.
That's Susan Tompor, personal finance columnist for the Detroit Free Press. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Okay, among the many federal agencies experiencing staffing cuts under the Trump administration, the U.S. Forest Service. It's responsible for everything from maintaining hiking trails to helping fight wildfires and making public lands less prone to fire. Some of those workers are now warning that staffing cuts make the agency less prepared for the upcoming fire season. Oregon Public Broadcasting's April Ehrlich reports.
As a Forest Service ecologist in Oregon, Lanny Flaherty's day-to-day job involved collecting data, a lot of it related to plants. Some of Flaherty's data goes into wildfire behavior modeling. For example, understanding where brush and trees grow in a landscape gives firefighters a better understanding of how a fire might move through it.
When you bring in 5,000 firefighters from all over the country, you need local specialization there to tell them where the stuff is.
Flaherty was one of 2,000 probationary workers in the Forest Service who were recently fired. That number was confirmed by a spokesperson with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which oversees the Forest Service. In interviews, almost a dozen current and former Forest Service employees say they're worried about the way these cuts will affect fire season. Flaherty says it's not just his data collection that's affected. He also helps fight fires when the Forest Service is understaffed.
Every role is so dynamic. There's a huge amount of those secondary roles that aren't just directly digging line or swinging a tool that support the firefighting
So Trump
operations.
Field rangers tasked with
firing all these
vast
federal
wildlands
workers.
that make up
He
the
says
West
he's gonna
were
make the
also
economy
people
better, but
fired, including Liz Crandall. She's based in Central Oregon.
where's the other
I'm the
jobs?
person that's seeing every corner
What's he
of the
looking to do
woods
now?
that others might not see.
Destroying abandoned campfires before they turned dangerous was part of Crandall's job. And like Flaherty, she assisted firefighters when needed. Crandall says she has responded to a dozen major wildfires.
I'm a firefighter type 2. I went to guard school. I have my chainsaw certification. I'm able to go on a fire line.
Crandall and Flaherty both worked for the Forest Service for years, but they entered into probationary periods when they took on new roles. In a statement, a spokesperson with the USDA said the agency did not fire any operational firefighters and is, quote, committed to preserving essential safety positions. They did not respond to questions about employees who were certified to fight fires as secondary roles or people who help do fire prevention work.
You can come up with a lot of ways in which this goes sideways very quickly for mountain communities, for forest communities.
Aaron Weiss is with the conservation advocacy group Center for Western Priorities. He says he's concerned that these firings will hinder wildfire prevention work like prescribed burning.
This is the single best tactic that we have across the West to minimizing wildfire risk when it comes to wildfire season.
And this is all happening on top of a hiring freeze on seasonal workers at the Forest Service that the Biden administration announced last year. For NPR News, I'm April Ehrlich in Portland.
Walking home, yeah.
Why not?
It's 5:29.
We'll
This
just
is
wrap it up.
Wisconsin Public Radio. I'm Brady Carlson. Thanks for being with us. Just ahead on All Things
Someone will get it
Considered,
later.
we'll check the latest news of the day with NPR and WPR News. The Wisconsin Assembly has passed a bill that would ban students from using cell phones in the classroom. We'll have that story and much more news coming up.
Do you want to experience a classical concert in a modern setting? Wisconsin Public Radio is excited to announce that we are hosting pint-sized concerts. These concerts feature Twin Ports Brass Quintet, and they will perform a classical twist on a modern classic. You can catch these pint-sized concerts at Thirsty Pagan Brewery on Monday, March 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. More at wpr.org/presents.
Clear to partly cloudy skies continue in Wisconsin. Overnight, there could be some flurries in the north. Overnight lows just below or just above zero. Tomorrow, partly cloudy and not quite as cold as today. Thursday's highs around 20 degrees statewide. Friday, partly sunny and quiet with highs in the low 20s.
Oh, what's the plan, Stan?
WPR News.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the firings of nearly a dozen employees from the nation's top intelligence agencies. The workers said they were being let go as part of President Trump's executive order to end diversity programs. NPR's Greg Myrie has more.
U.S. District Judge Anthony Tringa in Alexandria, Virginia, said he wanted further clarification in the case. He ordered the CIA and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to keep the 11 employees on paid administrative leave for now. The lawyer for the 11 called the attempt to fire them arbitrary and capricious. The workers are identified with pseudonyms, and there's no word on the positions they hold. The judge ordered another hearing for next Monday. According to reports, dozens
Well, then I'm done for the evening for as far as chores. I don't have enough firewood to get through.
to end DEI programs throughout the government. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Washington.
In Kentucky, at least 14 deaths are linked to severe weather and major flooding in recent days. As Karen Czar of member station WUKY tells us, now the concern is snow and ice.
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says the focus now is making sure everyone has shelter during the snowstorm. 2 people died from hypothermia earlier this week.
It's cold right now. It's going to get dangerously cold tonight and into tomorrow.
The governor is asking everyone to stay home if they can and be patient.
We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's a long
Man,
time.
yesterday I swore I bought
Expected to rise above freezing until Saturday. For NPR
2
News,
candy
I'm Karen
bars.
Czar in Lexington.
Really?
Stocks finished slightly higher on Wall Street this afternoon after a mixed day of trading. The Dow up 71 points, about 0.2%. You're listening to NPR News.
I know I did.
It's 5:32. This is news from Wisconsin Public Radio. I'm Brady Carlson. The Wisconsin Assembly is moving forward with a bill that would ban students from using cell phones in the classroom. Rich Kramer reports the measure's author contends it will improve learning.
Oh no, we did. It was M&M's.
The legislation would require
That's what
school
I
boards
bought.
to create policies banning wireless devices, including cell phones and laptops, during instructional time. It includes
Got Honey Nut
exceptions that will
Cheerios.
let students use devices in an emergency
I'm so
or for
stuffed.
educational purposes. Republican State Representative Joel Kitchens of Sturgeon Bay
I'm
says
almost
most
sick of
districts
you.
already have cell
Sick
phone
of food.
policies, but enforcement is a problem.
So it's time for Wisconsin to join the growing number of states that ban cell phones in the classroom and teaches kids to use technology responsibly.
Democrats in the Assembly call the bill an unfunded mandate that could backfire on districts with successful cell phone bans. Just before the Assembly debated the bill, the presiding officer in the Assembly reminded lawmakers that cell phones are not allowed to be used during floor sessions. Rich Kramer, Wisconsin Public Radio.
A Juneau County school district will avoid closure after voters there approved an operating referendum Tuesday. Mauston schools will receive $1.75 million in each of the next 4 years. Community members had voted down 2 previous referendum attempts. The budget shortfall prompted the Mauston School Board to consider dissolving the district in November. Superintendent Joel Heesh says when he saw the referendum pass, he felt joy and relief.
It means that we have a future. That's the first thing.
We'll get some
The
coffee
district will
in the
still
morning.
need to make some budget cuts because the referendum isn't enough to maintain current spending. He says they ultimately need more
Chill out.
funding from the state to avoid
What day is it
another
today?
referendum in 4 years.
Wednesday.
Cloudy skies continue
We'll
for
bring you
parts
by.
of the state this evening. Overnight, there could be some flurries in the north. Statewide, we'll see lows just below
Take
or
care,
just
thanks.
above zero. Tomorrow, partly cloudy weather and not quite as cold as today. Thursday's highs around 20 degrees statewide. For Friday, partly sunny and quiet weather, highs in the low 20s. The Slight warming trend continues into the weekend. Saturday, we'll see highs 25 to 30 degrees. We'll see some light snow Saturday night into early Sunday morning. Sunday, cloudy and milder. Highs reach the mid-30s to the low 40s. Monday looks mild with rain, snow, or mixed precipitation possible. This is news from Wisconsin Public Radio.
Support for NPR comes from this station
Watch out, some licorice.
and from Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. From Amazon Business, committed to being a digital purchasing solution for businesses so that growing the business is the main focus and not admin and paperwork. Learn about smart business buying at AmazonBusiness.com. And from listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Scott Detrow.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. Amid its constant stream of executive orders, the Trump administration signed one on Tuesday that expands his power over independent agencies. Independent agencies, well, like the name suggests, those agencies have long had some freedom from a president's whims. Trump wants to change that. This is part of a string of actions aimed at expanding presidential power.
To the max.
NPR White House correspondent Daniel Kurtzleben here is here to explain. Daniel, hi.
Hey, Mary Louise.
Hey, okay, so explain, and
Oh, they're
I
so
guess start with
good.
just because it might not be immediately clear why this is important. Why is it?
Right, well, let me start with some super basics. In the executive
It is.
branch, there are two broad types of agencies. There are executive agencies, and that includes departments everyone knows, the Department of Defense, Department of Justice. And then there are these independent agencies. Those have been set up by Congress with some insulation from presidential power.
It's too
Now, these are
damn
often
much.
agencies that have some sort of specialized knowledge for creating regulations. Think of the SEC really understanding the stock market, for example. But also there's often, at these agencies, a board or commission leading them, and the members have staggered terms. And a result of that is there's stability across presidential administrations for what rules they make, for example. So those agencies include things like the Consumer Product Safety Commission, which puts out those recalls on unsafe products. There's the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, which insures bank deposits. Now, one big way these agencies are independent,
Fiduciary.
the Supreme Court has said the president can't fire their heads for political reasons. And also, these agencies haven't had to run their rulemaking by the White House. But that is where this order comes in.
Aha, okay, so what does this order do?
Well, it says these agencies now do have to run new regulations by the White House. And in addition, it says these agencies now need to have White House liaisons and also
You're
check
almost
in
done,
to
babe.
make sure that what they're doing aligns with White House policy. And central to all of this is the Office of Management and Budget, whose director is Russell Vought. He has been a big proponent of giving the president this kind of power. And relatedly, Project 2025, a conservative blueprint for remaking the government, also advocates for presidents claiming this power.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around what this actually is. Like, give me an example of what this could look like in practice.
Sure. So here's one hypothetical, and it is, I want to stress, this is a hypothetical, but let's say the SEC wants to say impose a new rule on cryptocurrency. They would now have to run it by the White House. Now, that's a big deal in and of itself. They haven't had to do that. But now, imagine, for example, that the president has a cryptocurrency, as Trump does. So this sets up the White House, first of all, to have a say in some really important areas like finance, but it also could raise legal and ethical questions as its effects play out. But also I want to add something else. As one legal expert told